Have you ever noticed how some people seem to accomplish incredible things while barely breaking a sweat? They are not constantly stressed out. They are not grinding themselves into the ground. They are not working 80-hour weeks and sacrificing their health. And yet, somehow, they keep getting ahead. Meanwhile, you are working harder than anyone you know. You are putting in the hours. You are doing everything you are supposed to do. You are following all the advice about hustle and discipline, and you are completely exhausted. So what exactly is the difference between you and them? It is not intelligence because you are smart enough. It is not luck because they did not win a lottery. It is not even discipline because you have plenty of that. The difference is a principle, an ancient Chinese principle that is over 2,500 years old. It is called Wu-Wei, and it might be the most powerful concept you will ever learn. Wu-Wei comes from Taoism, one of the oldest and most influential philosophies in Chinese history. It was written about by the sage Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, a text that Chinese masters and scholars have studied and applied for thousands of years. The term translates roughly to effortless action, but this does not mean laziness. It does not mean doing nothing and hoping things work out. It means working with reality instead of against it. In ancient China, Taoist monks spent years observing nature closely. They watched how rivers flow around obstacles. They watched how trees bend in strong winds instead of breaking. They watched how water slowly wears down the hardest stone over time. And they noticed something profound. Nature does not force anything. It flows. And yet, it accomplishes everything it needs to accomplish. A river does not push its way aggressively toward the ocean. It simply finds the path of least resistance. And over centuries, that gentle, persistent flow carves through entire mountains. Today, I am going to show you how this ancient Chinese philosophy can completely change the way you approach your work and your life. Not in some vague, abstract way that sounds nice but means nothing. In practical steps you can actually use starting today. Because if the ancient Chinese understood this wisdom 2,500 years ago and built entire civilizations using it, imagine what it could do for your life right now. Here is what most of us were taught growing up. Want to succeed in life? Work harder than everyone else. Push through every obstacle. Grind until you have nothing left. Hustle around the clock. Never stop moving forward, no matter what. And for a while, this approach actually works. You feel productive. You feel like you are making real progress. You see results and you think this is the way. But then something happens. You burn out completely. You hit a wall you cannot push through. And no matter how hard you try, no matter how much effort you put in, nothing seems to move forward anymore. Chinese philosophy recognized this pattern thousands of years ago. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu wrote that the hard and rigid will eventually be broken, while the soft and yielding will ultimately overcome. Because there is a crucial difference between effort and force. Effort moves you forward naturally. Force creates resistance that pushes back against you. And most people spend their entire lives confusing these two things. When you force a conversation with someone, they shut down and stop listening. When you force a new habit through pure willpower, you quit within a week or two. When you force a solution at work without considering others, everyone pushes back against you. Force feels like progress in the moment, but it is not. It is friction. It is wasted energy. It is swimming against the current and wondering why you are so tired. The ancient Chinese understood this deeply. That is why Wu-Wei became one of the central principles of Taoist thought and practice. So what is the alternative to constant forcing? Wu-Wei. Effortless action that works with reality instead of against it. The first principle of Wu-Wei is simple to understand. If something requires constant force just to maintain, you are probably going in the wrong direction. In ancient China, martial artists built entire fighting systems around this idea. Tai Chi, Kung Fu, Aikido. These disciplines do not teach you to win by using more force than your opponent. They teach you to win by using your opponent's force against them. You redirect their energy. You flow around their attacks. You move with the energy instead of crashing against it. Minimal effort, producing maximum results. That is Wu-Wei in action. Let me give you a modern example you might recognize. Imagine you are trying to convince someone of your point of view. You are arguing passionately. You are explaining your logic over and over. You are pushing harder and harder to make them understand. But the more you push, the more they resist. The more you argue, the more they dig into their position. That is force, and it almost never works. But what if you approached it differently? What if you listened first before trying to be heard? What if you genuinely understood their position before attempting to lead them anywhere? Suddenly something changes. They feel heard and they open up. The conversation starts to flow naturally. They become receptive to your ideas because you aligned with them first. That is Wu-Wei. Influence through alignment rather than force. Or think about learning a new skill. At first, everything feels impossibly hard. You are forcing yourself to remember every detail. You are thinking consciously about every single movement. Your brain is working overtime just to do the basics. But then something shifts after enough practice. You stop thinking so much. You stop forcing every action. The skill becomes natural and automatic. You enter what modern psychologists call flow state. That is Wu-Wei, effortless action that emerges from alignment with reality rather than fighting against it. Chinese philosophy teaches that when you align yourself with the natural way things want to move, everything becomes dramatically easier. So here is an important question for you. Where in your life right now are you forcing things? Where are you pushing against doors that are clearly locked? Where does progress feel like dragging a heavy boulder uphill every single day? Those feelings are your signals. They are telling you something important. And the solution is not to push even harder. The solution is to find the path that flows. Let me talk about building new habits, because this is where most people completely misunderstand effort. Here is what most people do when they want to change their lives. They set a huge, ambitious goal. They commit to working out every single day for an hour. They tell themselves with absolute certainty that this time will be different. And for a week, maybe 2 if they are lucky, they force themselves to show up. They use pure willpower to drag themselves to the gym. Then they burn out. They quit. And they feel like complete failures. That approach is force. And force always fails eventually. Chinese philosophy teaches the exact opposite approach. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu wrote that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Wu-Wei says, start so small that there is literally no resistance. Want to start working out regularly? Do not commit to an hour at the gym every day. That is setting yourself up for failure. Instead, do 1 push-up. Just 1 single push-up. That is so ridiculously easy you cannot possibly say no. And once you do that 1 push-up, you will probably do 5 more, then 10, and before you know it, you have built an actual habit without the struggle. Want to read more books? Do not force yourself to read for an hour every night. That feels like homework, and you will resist it. Read 1 page instead. 1 page is nothing. It takes 2 minutes. But 1 page every single day adds up to 365 pages in a year. That is more than most people read in 5 years. This is what the ancient Chinese understood about change. Water does not force its way through solid rock. It flows gently, drop by drop, year after year. And eventually, the rock wears away completely. Wu-Wei removes the friction from progress. It makes improvement so gradual and natural that you barely notice it happening, until one day the results become completely undeniable. Because the goal was never to transform yourself overnight. The goal is to never stop moving forward. Here is something Chinese philosophy understood long before modern productivity experts discovered it. Success is not just about doing more things. It is about doing things at the right time. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu wrote extensively about the importance of natural timing. He observed farmers working their fields. He watched the seasons change year after year. And he noticed that everything in nature operates on its own perfect schedule. There is a season for planting seeds. There is a season for patient waiting. There is a season for harvesting the results. You cannot force a plant to grow faster than it naturally wants to grow. You cannot make summer arrive in the middle of winter, no matter how badly you want warmth. But you can prepare yourself. You can plant at exactly the right time. You can act decisively when conditions become favorable. That is not laziness. That is wisdom. Chinese martial artists mastered this principle of timing over centuries of practice. Bruce Lee, who studied Taoist philosophy deeply throughout his life, once said to be like water. Water does not force anything. It waits patiently. And when the moment is exactly right, it flows with absolutely unstoppable power. In your own life, this means recognizing when to act boldly and when to wait patiently, when to start a new project immediately and when to let the idea develop naturally, when to have a difficult conversation directly and when to give the other person space first. Most people only know one speed: push, force, go. But Wu-Wei teaches you that there are multiple speeds available to you. And knowing which one to use in each situation is the skill that ancient Chinese masters spent entire lifetimes perfecting. Here is something our modern culture gets dangerously wrong. We worship productivity above almost everything else. We glorify the grind as if exhaustion were a virtue. We celebrate people who work 80-hour weeks and sacrifice their health, relationships, and happiness. But Chinese philosophy understood something very different thousands of years ago. In Taoism, there is a fundamental concept called Yin and Yang, the eternal balance between action and rest, between doing and being, between pushing forward and recovering your strength. The ancient Chinese did not see rest as the opposite of productive work. They saw rest as an essential part of the productivity cycle itself. You cannot have yang without yin. You cannot have constant action without adequate recovery. The system breaks down without balance. Lao Tzu wrote that the usefulness of a pot comes from its emptiness. In other words, it is the empty space inside that gives the pot its value, not the clay walls. The space. The same principle applies to your mind. Want to be more creative? You cannot force a good idea to appear. The harder you try to think of something brilliant, the more blocked and frustrated you become. But when you relax and stop trying so hard, when you take a walk outside and let your mind wander freely, that is exactly when the best ideas arrive. Chinese scholars understood this phenomenon deeply. They practiced what they called sitting and forgetting. Not formal meditation necessarily, not analytical thinking, just being present without agenda, creating empty space for insights to emerge naturally. So build real rest into your daily system. Take walks without any destination in mind. Sleep deeply and sufficiently. You are following Wu-Wei. You are flowing. And as the ancient Chinese discovered thousands of years ago, flow is absolutely unstoppable.